Hey guys, Mike from mikesgaminggala here, and I thought now that we've had a few days to digest the news that Atari has acquired AtariAge, that I would do a bit of a deep dive into what I think potentially is going to happen, as well as what the effects are going to be in the broader sphere of the homebrew community. Because a lot of people are talking about this as if AtariAge is the only place that sells homebrews, or just within the silo of Atari and AtariAge, when in fact it has a much broader, well, it probably will have a much broader impact. Much like throwing a stone into a pond, obviously you're going to have a ripple effect going around. So I've got my notes here, so I'll be looking over here every once in a while. I'm usually not that great kind of going off script, but here we go. So, well, first of all, can we just all appreciate how bad the timing was that AtariAge, the site, went down briefly this weekend? Just had nothing to do with the sale, but obviously I saw people on Facebook panicking. It was actually kind of funny that Atari bought AtariAge, and then 2 days later the site goes down. Had nothing to do with anything. Trust me, I am 99.9% sure that Atari would not buy AtariAge just to nuke it. So, just kind of funny timing, and I'm sure, now people can laugh about it, but at the time I wouldn't have wanted to be anywhere near Albert when he realized what happened. So, let's talk about what AtariAge is. So, AtariAge is primarily three things. Number one, they're a store for homebrews as well as hardware and games for a wide variety of systems, not just Atari systems. They've got ColecoVision, they've got Commodore 64 stuff, lots of different games, hardware, and materials in that regard. That is probably the biggest thing that Atari was interested in. It is also the biggest Atari homebrew distributor, probably in the world. I don't know if that's still true after they removed all the ports, but it may still be. Second, it's an archive, a repository for information. They've got box scans, manual scans, rarity guides, cartridge scans, all kinds of information about all different Atari systems and the games, and lots of different information in that regard. And probably what it's most known for is it is a fan forum. A big part of it is Atari, but it's really a fan forum for all things retro. And actually, even leading up, they've got a forum for a section in the forum for modern consoles. So I know for me personally, I spend a lot of time in the Intellivision community. There's a big ColecoVision community there. There's Odyssey 2. There's really just all of these systems, and it's kind of a gathering place for a lot of people who are not only fans of the system, or these systems, but experts in them. So, keep in mind, every time there's a new Kotaku article about, for instance, a new Atari prototype was discovered, or a Vectrex prototype was discovered, the site that they often source is AtariAge. It has been, for a very long time, kind of the source for information and the newest, most recent discoveries for a lot of retro systems. So I know a lot of people have had bad experiences with the forum, and there are some people I've seen comments, it's like, oh, I hope they just nuke the forum. I really think that there is great value there, and it's been a community effort. So throwing the baby out with the bathwater, probably not the best of things. Yeah, like I've got written here, the community is a wealth of information. So let's look at the pros and cons. of Atari acquiring AtariAge. I've seen people saying it's, you know, a marriage made in heaven and the greatest thing since sliced bread. I've seen people posting that it's terrible and this is the end of AtariAge, and everything in between. I tend to file in between. In the last few months, I've made friends with people that are big into the VCS, the Atari new iteration of Atari, and their community. And obviously, I come more from the homebrew side. So, looking at it from both ends, let's take a look at what I think are the pros and cons. So, the first pro is that Albert is incredibly well suited to his new role as internal historian for Atari. He has been the custodian of AtariAge. Obviously, he owns AtariAge, but the custodian of all that archival material. He's got a wealth of knowledge and 20 plus years of managing a community of very knowledgeable people about Atari. And I like the fact that Atari seems to view that as important. I'm big on history myself, and I think that, you know, if we can apply some resources to that and investment into that, which Atari seems to be keen to do, to preserve its own history, I think that's a fantastic thing. VCS fans, you should be thrilled. This means more games for the VCS, and it means more physical releases from Atari. I can't imagine that they would be doing physical releases and not offer those homebrews on the VCS as well. And maybe if it's successful enough and like it's a 2600 game, you get the kind of remastered version released on the VCS, like with Mr. Run and Jump. So I think that's fantastic news if you're an Atari fan. Shipping times from AtariAge should improve. Albert has kind of been a one-man shop for a long time. And even prior to the big backlog caused by the flash sale, I have heard stories of people waiting months to receive their orders from AtariAge. So that will improve. Some homebrew programmers are going to be able to program games that will get official Atari releases. That is a dream for, I think, a lot of people. Not everybody who currently creates games for AtariAge and licenses them to AtariAge to produce physical copies will get that opportunity. Atari will likely have kind of standards that they'll want to impose, and probably they only want to release X amount of games. They don't want to just flood and have tons of games available all the time, because they're going to be making them on a broader scale. But the programmers that do get agreements with Atari to release games, their games are probably going to be more widespread. They're going to be official Atari releases, and that's certainly a feather in the cap and potentially some more money for programmers than they would have gotten just through homebrew. So that's a very positive thing for certain programmers. The last point that is a real positive, and I think it's a positive more on the side of the AtariAge community, even if it changes, is that it seems that the alternative to this would have been for Albert to just walk away. He may have sold it to another individual, and then who knows what would have happened there. But selling it to Atari makes sense, and Atari does have a vested interest in preserving this community. So I think that things are going to be all right. We have yet to see. But this is also why I don't consider what Albert did selling out. Obviously, there's different definitions to that. Albert did sell, but the fact that he's still going to be involved, at least short term, in terms of the forums, but involved with the archival aspect of it and the historian aspect of it. And the fact that he sold it to an entity that at least publicly seems to care about that community, I think that's a positive thing, and it's certainly better than the alternatives that may have come from it. Now let's take a look at some of the cons to this purchase. For starters, corporate ownership of a fan forum rarely ends well. Atari, like I said, has a vested interest in this community, but they also have a vested interest in their products, in their releases, in their company, and how their company is perceived. So it is entirely likely that the AtariAge forums will receive some sanitation. Now, I mentioned earlier that I know some people who have had very bad experiences on AtariAge. They've had bad experiences with some members. They've had even some bad experiences with some mods. And all because they were VCS fans, or they asked the wrong question, or they were newbies, or whatever. And I do not condone under any circumstances bullying. I'm very anti-bullying. In the same vein, and this might surprise some people, I don't really support the idea of safe spaces. Not because I support bullying, but because I find that safe spaces are often used as an excuse to shelter yourself from other ideas, from other opinions, and just be reinforced with your own. So it's my hope that they allow, like, obviously there's community guidelines, and you know, in any forum, whoever owns the forum, that's their house. If somebody came into my house and started trash talking my kids, I'd kick them out of my house. At the same time, if it's valid criticism, if it's valid debate, as long as you're not attacking somebody, I don't think you should have any fear of having stuff deleted. And I don't know if that's going to be the case. Hopefully not. Certainly not in the short term. I think Atari's getting their ducks in a row, and I think that focuses more on the store side of things and physical releases. So hopefully the forums don't change too much. I do think they will, but yeah, that's probably going to happen, and I just hope that valid criticism and valid debate continue to be allowed. One point that I'd like to make is that AtariAge has been around and has been thriving for about 20 years. And no iteration of Atari has ever survived more than 20 years. In fact, nowhere near that. So, Atari owning this now, my question would be, and granted, Albert said that this was probably going to be going away anyway, but Atari owning it now, what does the future hold if Atari gets to a point where they sell or they don't want to release the retro stuff anymore, and now this fan forum is costing them money? Who knows? It's my hope that this iteration of Atari lasts a long time. I think they've made some very smart moves. It's not the same Atari that first released the VCS. So I don't think they're a dumb company. I think they'll be around for a while, but it would be interesting to see what would happen to AtariAge should Atari change hands once more. I would say that Atari entering the homebrew market, obviously anything Atari releases will be official Atari releases. I think this is the end of Atari Ports. Now, I'm not talking about like the remastered Berserk or the special edition of Outlaw. Atari releasing ports and remasters of their own games. I'm talking about just in general ports from other licenses that Atari doesn't own, ports produced by homebrew publishers outside of AtariAge. Because now that Atari is in the homebrew market, they are now competing with every other person or company that produces or distributes homebrew games, particularly for the Atari 2600 and 7800. And it's well within Atari's rights to be, but Atari could very well get litigious. So if, for instance, there's, John Champeau's site where he's got, Champ Games has ROMs that you can purchase. And I believe that his Atari licensed ROMs, Atari is going to take on, and they're going to stay in the store. I don't know if that's the case, but I think so. But other ones, they're now working with Jean Champeau. Jean Champeau has ROMs that infringe on other IPs that Atari doesn't own, such as Pac-Man. Are they going to be willing to work with him even though his site has those? Probably not. My thought process is that if you are interested in ports of any type, of any license, from other homebrew publishers, that now is probably the time to get them before that starts to become locked down. Certainly Atari issuing cease and desists on their IPs, which they have full right to do, but also Atari bringing more attention to the homebrew community and more attention to money potential to be made in the homebrew community. That might bring other IP license holders looking and issuing some cease and desists. It may have broader effects with other homebrew companies. And so if I was a publisher or a distributor, I would probably shy away from ports just in general, unless they had been like, if you took Pac-Man and made Mr. Muncher and you changed the sprites and you changed things around, then I'd probably publish that. But something like Pac-Man 4K or Pac-Man 8K, I probably wouldn't publish that. Even though it's not an Atari license, that spotlight is kind of being turned on, particularly for Atari homebrew, and I think a lot of publishers are just going to shy away from that. This will affect other systems as well. Don't be delusional in thinking that this is just limited to Atari platforms. Just last week, I did a review on Missile Domination, which is an Intellivision port of Missile Command. And the game itself, sprites weren't changed. It looks like Missile Command. It plays like Missile Command. It's Missile Command. It's just called Missile Domination. And games like that are also probably going to be within the radar of Atari sending cease and desists. There have been lots of ports for the ColecoVision and for the Intellivision and for other consoles of Atari titles. So I do believe the ripples are going to affect other systems as well. And that's not great, but I've mentioned this before. I love homebrew. I love the homebrew community, and I love ports. I love better versions of games that I played as a kid. But what really excites me about the homebrew community is new games. And this is going to kind of, not right away, but eventually move to, I believe that the vast majority of homebrew will no longer be dominated by ports. It will be newer games, or at least better hidden ports than have currently happened. And that's going to happen for every system. And yeah, I would bet money that if you want to get some ports, get them sooner rather than later, because within the next 2-3 years, I think you're going to find them very hard to come by. Finally, for my channel, what does this mean? I review homebrew games. I do a new review every Thursday, and I review for a variety of different systems. I've got tons in the queue ready to go. Will I review official Atari releases now that Atari is entering this market? And I've thought about it a bit, and I don't think I will. I'll still buy them, but the purpose of my channel was to give spotlight and to give professional reviews for games that don't get that normally. For a community that is comparatively small and doesn't get the spotlight that I think it deserves. And it's starting to, and be careful what you wish for. But I think my channel should continue to focus on smaller homebrew companies, on games that normally wouldn't get proper reviews or get that spotlight. And you know that for every Atari release, official release, there's going to be, within a week, a dozen different videos on the game. I'm not really one to cover a specific company or even just a specific system. So while it's possible I may review one or two if I find them really exciting, probably I won't. I'll continue to focus on games that you may have never heard of, or that just don't get that spotlight and don't have a lot of play online, so that they can get some of that. And if you're looking at a written description of a game on a site like Good Deal Games, and you're looking and you're like, oh, this game plays like this and this, and you want to see more of it before deciding on what to buy, my channel's going to be here for you. So those are kind of my thoughts. I'm sorry if this chopped around. I've got a cold, so if you see cuts throughout it, it's because I was coughing or I was drinking some water or something. But that's kind of my more deep dive. That's my thoughts on what's going to happen with the industry. And really, at the end of the day, it's all speculation. We're going to see what comes of all this. But I think I'm pretty on point with most of the things I've talked about. So, food for thought. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And we'll see you next time on Mike's Gaming Gala.